Hey, good morning, all. Josh of Severe Weather. Happy Tuesday to you. We've got another storm to keep our eyes on across Texas and parts of the South, and a very active pattern continues as we have a big block with high pressure starting to build into the west and very unsettled weather across the southern United States over the next several days. Here's where our risk of severe weather has been climbing with each forecast. We've got low pressure set to drop through the Rockies and move into the Texas and New Mexico region. And with it, severe weather is going to start to get going here later this evening into the overnight, and especially tomorrow across central and eastern Texas. And that does include, by the way, southern Oklahoma, northwestern Louisiana, southwest Arkansas, as we've got an intense low pressure system aloft, which is going to get pushed eastward and track across the southern U.S. Behind it, another storm is going to come up and over this. So here is a look at our satellite image. And you guys can see the storm system now moving through about the Salt Lake City, Utah area. That is going to continue off to the south and east. And as it does so, it is going to pick up quite a bit of moisture out of the Gulf that is going to expand all the way into West Texas, an area that seems to get missed storm after storm after storm. Excuse me. But this storm is not going to miss West Texas, depending on where our dry line sets up here. So areas that had a major dust storm over the weekend will be under the gun for potentially some severe weather here as we head on into this evening. And that storm is going to continue across the southern United States, keeping the weather active on the Gulf Coast and especially across Florida as we get to the second half of this week. And behind it, we've got another storm, which is going to follow kind of in the same path of this storm. And that is going to perhaps turn into an East Coast, maybe nor'easter here by the end of this weekend and start of this upcoming week here, beginning of May 1st timeframe across the Northeast. The rest of the country remains pretty cool over the Northeast, a broad trough in place here, producing some snow showers over parts of the Great Lakes, the higher elevations, and in Canada, areas that had record heat both of the last 2 weeks, dealing with an unseasonably chilly weather pattern. The Mid-Atlantic region not looking too bad today. It'll stay on the cool side, but that rain is coming for us. And in the west, after this storm moves through the northwest, we are going to see a nice warm up coming with some drier weather over the second part of this week and especially into the weekend. Maybe some triple digit temperatures over parts of the Southern Valley of California for the first time this year. Currently, we've got freeze warnings in effect from southeast Michigan down into western North Carolina and East Tennessee. And we also have winter storm warnings over some of the higher elevations of Colorado, Wyoming, and Montana. Also a flash flood watch in effect over the Sierra Nevada as all of the snow is melting as temperatures continue to warm. And we do have a critical, dangerous setup for fire weather over parts of the Southwest, especially parts of New Mexico and into West Texas. As we look ahead here, we do have a threat for a marginal risk of severe weather, some hail possible again today, and also some strong winds possible over southeast Florida, especially this afternoon. A marginal risk overall. The threat for tornadoes is low, but there certainly is a chance for a water spout or two. Tomorrow, the risk for severe weather does start to move northward into southeastern and south central parts of Georgia, with the threat for hail and strong winds moving up the east coast of Florida into southern Georgia, but staying south of Atlanta. And then as we get into day 3, we do have a marginal risk of severe weather with our next storm system over Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, far western Georgia, and the western panhandle of Florida. Now, where the greater chance for severe weather in the next couple of days will be is over the southern plains. And we do have the threat for some significant hail and strong wind, as well as a few tornadoes as supercells form this evening in west central parts of Texas. So right in the big sky country here into the heart of Texas and into parts of West Texas, maybe even close to Lubbock and Plainview and Amarillo, we do have the risk for seeing some hail and some strong wind later on today. As we get to tomorrow, there's now an increasing risk for severe weather over the Dallas-Fort Worth region and an enhanced risk. This is level 3 out of 5 for severe weather centered around the southern part of the Metroplex. We could see very big hail later in the day tomorrow, mainly about 6 o'clock and on into the evening hours. So if you're getting home from work in the Dallas-Fort Worth region, you may want to find an interior place to park your car, as very big hail is certainly possible. Also a risk for severe wind and a few tornadoes as supercells get going, and those will continue into a storm system that carries on into the night. Now, taking a look at the upper level pattern, what is causing this is we've got a huge trough over the northeast that is kind of blocking things off. So this storm track is coming by farther to the south and getting pushed all the way down into Texas. When we see low heights like this is 500 millibars, we see that increased risk for large hail. The reason why is that the atmosphere is cooling off and creating a very unstable situation where temperatures cool quickly as we go aloft. And the colder it gets aloft, the more threat for hail. But we also have that risk for tornadoes and strong winds. This storm system is going to open up and move eastward, and another storm is going to drop by and kind of follow the same path here over the weekend. This time, though, we've got a huge push of cold air aloft into the eastern U.S. and the Great Lakes over this weekend. What that's going to do is allow this next storm to merge with the upper level feature and produce a big, potentially East Coast storm Sunday into Monday. So that is what I'm going to be tracking for you in future videos. There's still some uncertainty with this still being about 7 to 8 days out, but nonetheless, when you see a big ridge like this and then a huge trough digging south, this is one of those that makes you kind of scratch your head and say, hey, where was this all winter when we wanted to see a big snowstorm? We just didn't have it. We had kind of a different trough position back in here. Now everything is shifted to the East Coast. So here's a look at the 500 millibar heights and also just the upper level pattern. And you can see why things are going to get pretty unsettled here across the south here tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow night. And this storm track continues, but it does weaken some as it moves into the southeast Thursday into Friday. At this point, I think we're looking at another big rainmaker over the southeast at the end of this week. But here comes the next system, and you can see things are going to be setting up for a big East Coast storm later Sunday into Monday. Everything's going to track up the coast with this next feature set to kind of slingshot straight up here into New England by next week, Monday into Tuesday of next week. So get ready for a lot of potential rain in the future here over the next week or so. Here is our surface low pressure system. You can see snow falling over the Colorado Rockies and the Utah mountains here, especially tomorrow. But we also see increased risks for thunderstorms, which could be severe as this storm track continues eastward here later today and especially tomorrow over East Texas. And I'm going to zoom in on this and show you guys some more detail. This storm tracks eastward along the Gulf Coast here tomorrow, not really tomorrow, but Thursday into Friday. And we see a lot of rain moving eastward on Friday across the Ohio Valley into the mid-Atlantic region. So the week ends kind of on a wet note here, unfortunately, with a lot of rain expected. And we could see some severe weather across Florida and Georgia potentially, depending on how all this plays out. But this low is just going to be in our hair through the weekend. Looks like a really nasty day on Saturday across the Northeast. Eastern New England should be okay Saturday, but Sunday the storm does progress and make its way into the Boston area. Meanwhile, our next storm system comes down and follows kind of the same path, but this time it's going to get picked up and accelerate Sunday night into Monday, and maybe we do have a little bit of severe weather over the southeast on Sunday, especially Florida up into southern parts of South Carolina. But I think the bigger story is going to be the driving rainfall that comes up the East Coast and maybe some coastal erosion, depending on the exact track of this low. At the same time, on the northern branch, we have a pretty unsettled track over the Great Lakes and the upper Midwest, and that could bring more snow to Ontario, Minnesota, maybe upper Michigan here over the weekend. But this cold air gets infused into our surface low, and as a result, we're likely going to see some wet snowflakes falling across the eastern lakes into eastern Ontario, as well as the higher elevations of the Northeast by the beginning of next week. More on that to come. At the same time, how chilly it is here in the East, we see remarkable warm-ups coming here across the West, where this weekend will be our warmest in several weeks over California and the Southwest, even 70s and 80s over the Pacific Northwest. So it should be some pretty nice weather. The one thing I am cautioning you on, though, is the risk for a rapid snowmelt over the mountains of California and Nevada. Here's a look at our rain forecast over the next week, and it ain't pretty here in the south and east, I will say that. We do need this rain in the southern plains, a likelihood of 1 to 3 inches widespread, and some areas may see as much as 5 inches of rain potentially, according to the Euro. And I'll show you the blended models in a little bit, but you can see it's going to be a wet pattern here on the East Coast right on into Friday and Saturday, and as well as Sunday. Now let's take a look at Florida. We had some severe weather yesterday on the east coast of Florida. Right now, storms are primarily going to be off of the Everglades and over the Keys this morning, but more storms expected to fire with the heating of the day this afternoon and affect the east coast. So Miami, Port St. Lucie, east of Ocala and Gainesville, and maybe even the interior of the Tampa Bay region away from Tampa Bay could see more strong storms with the threat for hail right on into this evening. In fact, there could be a lot of lightning as well. So outdoor plans in Florida are not looking great for this evening, unfortunately. These storms will die off tonight for the most part. We could see a few renegades continuing overnight. As we get to tomorrow, though, additional storms expected to fire across the same region. This is the HRRR model, and it is very active across right through the middle of the peninsula, favoring kind of the west coast area along and west of 75. For Central Florida, but east of 75 for South Florida. So the Alligator Alley region looks pretty stormy. Now that is the HRRR model. It's going to show you guys, if I can, take that back. The NAM model looks a little bit different here, and let me zoom in and show you guys that as well. It still has storms, but it is not quite as impactful as what the HRRR model is showing. So just something to keep in mind. The models do not fully agree. In fact, tomorrow, according to the NAM model, is not very busy at all across southeast Georgia or Florida. So I would favor the HRRR at this point over the NAM because it seems to have picked up a little bit better on these storms. But certainly this could end up being right, and we see kind of a downtrend in our forecasts across Florida for the day tomorrow. Now, looking back into the southern plains and in particular Texas, we see a lot of moisture getting drawn up to the western parts of Texas, up into the Big Sky country here. You can see this is moisture increasing and a pretty big feed coming all the way up into areas that really do need to see moisture. Even if it's not going to rain a lot, we need to see a moisture air mass, because what's happening is with the dry air mass we've had for several days, we've had this increased fire danger. Now that we've got this moisture getting drawn all the way back to almost the New Mexico border, you can kind of see there's a dry line feature right in here, exactly where these greens meet up with these lighter colors. Then we certainly see that moisture transport coming up into West Texas. And this is going to be overnight tonight and carrying into tomorrow morning. It does finally get pushed east. So we do see a return of faster winds and much drier air wrapping back into this region. So it is going to be a much different day tomorrow in West Texas than today, with winds changing direction from southeast going back to west and humidity levels dropping off very quickly, bringing an increased fire danger tomorrow. But we'll take what we can get at this point. Now notice tomorrow afternoon, evening looks very busy along the I-35 corridor with moisture building up. And once the cap breaks, we do see that risk for severe weather. This will eventually get pushed away on Thursday morning, and then we see Louisiana seeing most of that moisture potential. Here's a look at the HRRR model, and this is a look at what's going to happen later today. We'll see some rain and maybe a few embedded thunderstorms over Oklahoma, and the rain certainly is welcome. Fortunately, not a big tornado day in Oklahoma. We definitely don't want to see that after last week. But we do have the threat for maybe a few isolated stronger storms in southwest Oklahoma around 6 or 7 o'clock. But notice in the panhandle and into the panhandle of Texas, we could see a few hailers here this afternoon around 7 o'clock, and especially tonight, 8, 9, and 10 o'clock. And then these storms will march eastward across the Red River Valley. Now, the HRRR does not have as much going on here across central parts of Texas, but the NAM model has shown that that risk is there. And I will show you the NAM here as we go on into this evening. We can see kind of maybe some more intense storms beginning to pick up here. But notice overall, the threat for overall widespread severe weather is not super big here, but anything that does pop up does have that risk for turning severe. So it's a conditional threat, but much like last week in Oklahoma where things were conditional, once they did get going, they got bad in a hurry. So there is that enhanced risk that we could see some hail in here if this cap does break here heading into this evening. Now tomorrow, different story. We will definitely see the cap breaking. The NAM model, though, does not have a lot going until the evening around 6, 7 o'clock towards Abilene and San Angelo. And then those storms spread east right along the Red River in places like McKinney, Denton, Gainesville, Texas, and eventually into the Metroplex in the evening. around 9, 10 o'clock will likely get hit with potentially some very intense wind and some large hail and maybe even a tornado or two, especially at the beginning of this threat of storms. This will continue eastward, and we'll just see heavy rain over parts of Arkansas. Not really a huge severe threat, but south of Little Rock, definitely keep an eye on things later tomorrow night. Same for northern Louisiana, or lower Arkansas, whichever you want to call it. But either way, we are going to see a complex of storms tracking east, and by Thursday, an intense day of storms possible over parts of southern Louisiana and into south central Mississippi, especially in the afternoon. This model only goes out to about 1 o'clock central, but you can see the area that will likely be under the gun. This is the NAM model. The HRRR model, you can see, is not as organized with storms, but definitely does blow storms up very quickly here tomorrow evening. And instead of north of Dallas, it actually has the threat for storms a little farther south and west, between Round Rock and Dallas, eventually getting down that way towards Austin after midnight tomorrow night. So there could be very big hail. And certainly if you pull up the profiles here, there is a risk for some tornadic activity as well under the cover of the darkness tomorrow night. Winds from the surface go south-southeast and then quickly go to south and southwest. So there's wind shear, and that certainly could increase our risk for some tornadoes. Now, as we get farther into the east, the threat for organized severe weather drops, but the threat for heavy rain climbs as we pull in more Gulf moisture here on Thursday. Sorry about that. You can see we've got this rain moving into northern Florida Thursday night and then spreading east into the Carolinas Friday morning. So if you're in Columbia, South Carolina, or Atlanta, it will be wet off and on Thursday, but really the heavier rain comes later Thursday night into Friday morning. That's when things will be nasty. Probably not a big severe threat at this point, but keep an eye on things across the coastal region, the low country, and then spreading southward into Florida here on Friday. We do see that chance for maybe some stronger storms Friday morning in North Florida. And then once again on the East Coast, the Space Coast, the Treasure Coast, Friday afternoon. And then this front moves offshore and we see some quieter weather on Saturday, but maybe some welcome rain on the western part of the peninsula here Saturday afternoon as this front is kind of hung up across central and south Florida. Taking a look farther off to the north across the mid-Atlantic region, we see, yep, these purple colors and blue colors indicating some flakes may fly in the higher elevations tonight into the first part of tomorrow, but mainly just some rain showers. Could even be a little bit of grapple and some ice pellets that try to mix in. Tomorrow afternoon, though, there could be a few scattered small hail cells that move through these showers across Baltimore, Maryland, into Delaware and southeastern Pennsylvania. A little bit of instability aloft that we're keeping an eye on. And then a few sprinkles carrying into New England here on Thursday and New Jersey as well. But here come the parade of storms, the first one moving through the Tennessee Valley and the lower Ohio Valley Thursday into Thursday night. Probably no severe weather at this point, but certainly heavy rain and embedded thunder with that, embedded lightning. As we get to Friday, though, that is going to be the really nasty day over the mid-Atlantic region. And we could see a few thunderstorms over parts of West Virginia and southern Ohio Friday afternoon and early evening. You can see after we get rid of this cooler, stable part of our air mass, we see a few embedded cells in here and a little bit more instability. So we could have a few thunderstorms in here, but mainly a soaking rain moving up the East Coast. Saturday looks like a washout around New York City, New Jersey, southern New England. This should sound familiar for those of you that had a wet weekend last weekend. We get a bit of a break across the mid-Atlantic Saturday night into Sunday. Next storm Sunday night, though, sweeps in quickly. And we see rain moving into the Northeast here Sunday evening and spreading northward overnight, Sunday night into Monday morning. Could be a very wet commute across southern New England, northeastern PA, and the New York City area early in the day on Monday, depending on storm timing. But notice with that colder air following, we do see more higher elevation snow showers. And finally, a look at the Northeast. So you can see that wintry weather, the purple colors mixed in here, mainly over the higher terrain, instability showers up until Friday. Friday's the best day of the week, and then Friday night and Saturday, we turn wet once again with heavier rainfall expected for the coastal plain Saturday night, and then moving into New England Sunday morning. And then about a 24 to 36 hour lull before we have another big storm moving up. And this is going to drench New England and the Northeast here Sunday night and especially on Monday, following with colder air aloft and probably some snow showers over parts of eastern Canada. Finally, a look at total rainfall from weatherbell.com. I've been using Pivotal a lot more, but here's weatherbell.com. And through the weekend and early next week, we have a widespread potential of seeing 1 to 3 inches of rain. Does not mean everybody's going to see that amount. Somebody's probably going to get more, and there could be somewhat of a flood threat over parts of Virginia and North Carolina, but especially over northern Florida, southern Georgia, and also the east coast of Florida. This is the eastern U.S. And as we get up into the northeast, many places could see well over 2 inches of rain as well, depending on where our storm track sets up. Looking back into the center part of the country, some welcome rain in here. Yeah, it ain't going to be pretty, but we do need rain across southeastern Colorado, southwestern parts of Kansas, western Oklahoma, and the Texas Panhandle. And many of these areas do likely see the threat for between 1 and 3 inches of rain, with that threat, of course, with thunderstorms of higher amounts, maybe getting up to as much as 5 inches. Well, thank you all so much for your time today. I hope you have a safe day, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. I'll have another video for you in the morning. If you could subscribe to my channel, I really do appreciate that. If you could share this with your friends. I am getting very close to 5,000 followers. Again, not something I'm obsessed with, but I would love to have more people see these videos. And a lot of that is because I believe I've been called by God to do this every day. I want to give all the glory to Him. And John 14:1, Jesus tells His disciples, "Don't let your heart be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me." It's very difficult to believe in something that you just do not know, that you just do not see. But for me, I took that leap of faith, kind of that Indiana Jones moment there, where I believed that there was a reason for everything that I was doing. I was called to do something, that good things were going to come to me. And Jesus encourages His disciples not to let their heart be troubled. A troubled heart is one that constantly worries, one that constantly doubts, one that does not put God first. And again, this is not to criticize anybody out here watching or any of your friends and family. We all have doubts in our mind, but to just kind of put our faith in God and just say, look, God, I'm going to talk to you. I know that sacrifices have been made. You sent your son Jesus to die on the cross so that we could be saved from our sin. And with that sin comes the troubled heart, comes the doubts, the fear, the worry of the unknown, the worry of the uncertain future. But believing in God and putting trust in Jesus puts all those doubts behind, takes that weight off your shoulders. That's kind of weird looking there. And gives it all to God and says, God, you're going to carry my burdens. You've already done it through Jesus Christ. And that allows me to do what I do every day with fervent cheer. I love doing these videos. Even if only a few people are watching, I'm still communicating what's out there and what can affect you and your lives, but also to share my faith, because that's really what gives me the joy in what I do every day. And I hope it does for you as well in one way or another. Happy to pray for you if you are struggling. Happy to pray for any of your family and have others pray for you as well. Feel free to leave those in the comments. I really appreciate your time today. Have a blessed day. I'll see y'all again in the morning. Take care.